Hello everyone. I wanted to do a quick video on something that I thought was really interesting. And I was thinking about coil configurations. Um, and if you haven't gone to Old Man Build's channel on YouTube, I recommend you go there. There's lots of great people doing interesting things, and it's often talked about how the field of the transformer is hot or magnetic on the outside and cold. This has to do with um, hot current and cold current. Hot current is shocking and burns, and cold current isn't. It's the non-magnetic power or energy. Um, so anyway, I was thinking about configurations like this in these patterns, and I thought that looks a lot like a molecular structure. So I got to looking at some, and one was very interesting to me. Benzene, and it has a hexagonal structure with hydrogen, 6 hydrogen on the outside and 6 carbon on the ring. Now, I looked at that and I thought, well, there's hydrogen hot and carbon cold. Some people will say, well, that's silly, you shouldn't correlate that. But I don't like to ignore those kinds of little things. I think they have a place and meaning a lot of times. So, and benzene, so that would be considered C6H6, the 6 carbon atoms and the 6 hydrogen. And it's a hydrocarbon. And an aromatic molecule, which means it has a smell associated with its structure. A lot of people consider it to be a good smell. It's similar to gasoline or petrol and things like that. And this molecule, even though they say it's toxic, it's used. The benzene ring is used in many formulas as the base for those mixtures. You know, there's scents and tastes, flavors, and all kinds of stuff. If you ever want to look into it, there's so many. So I thought that was really interesting. There's kind of an esoteric story behind benzene. It was originally discovered. This is a liquid also, kind of a yellowish liquid. It was discovered in the early 1800s by Michael Faraday, and some years after that, a chemist by the name of Auguste Kekulé was thinking about its structure. There was lots of arguments about its structure. It was difficult. They couldn't figure it out. He was sitting in front of his fireplace one evening and had these visions of strings of atoms circling and moving and stuff, and they started to circle in his head into a circle, and he said it was like an Ouroboros where the serpent's eating its own tail. And that's sort of connected to the fact years earlier he was a witness in a trial, and the woman was wearing a ring that was an Ouroboros, and he said it came back to him when he saw that, and then he knew that the structure was a circular structure. I'm sure that he was probably in a theta state. That happens a lot. Things like these kinds of things come to people often in those times. So kind of a neat little esoteric story behind it in a way. So I'm going to draw an isometric view here of benzene. Now, when benzene is in a stronger magnetic field, it creates its own induced magnetic field, which immediately aligns the molecule with the stronger magnetic field. And these carbon here are what are called pi bonded. So they're bonded to another carbon in the structure. And these there's delocalized electrons. The electron, I'm not saying the electron is a particle. There's a lot of debate about that. You can call it a self-sustaining toroidal energy nucleus, however. But what happens is there's a field. A field is created above the nucleal plane of the structure and below the nucleal plane of the structure is a flow and a motion of energy. And these creates an electron density. These electrons are free to bounce around because they're not bonded to anything in particular, so they're called delocalized electrons. And they start spinning above and below the plane of the structure, and then it gets a induced magnetic field that starts to move. And this toroidally moves out and around, and this outer portion of the field is called deshielded. And that's where it's magnetic or hot. And you can associate that with amp and current and things like that. And this is the positive. And then the field goes down through the center of the benzene rings into here, where it becomes shielded from magnetic. So that becomes diamagnetic, cold, volt, and that's the negative in there. Let's do a side view. There's the nucleal plane, carbons, and then your delocalized electron field above and below. And the induced magnetic field down and through. And this motion may be something like this. And then that's the negative in there and the positive out here. So the interesting thing about this molecule, one of the interesting things, is the reason why it was very difficult to describe its structure. I'm going to draw some hexagons here. It has the pi bonded carbons on one part of its structure, and then it has the inverse bonded on the other. These are two separate structures existing at the same time that are inverse to each other, and they resonate. They're resonant, so it's called a resonant hybrid. This molecule owes its very existence to the fact that these two structures are resonant to each other in the same place and time. And for those of you who appreciate geometry, if we connected the bonded carbons on each structure, and then the full resonant molecule, that, which is very interesting. And they mainstream now, they signify the resonant molecule with that symbol there. So we all know this shape. Everyone recognizes this whole system here. You could put a air core transformer there. You could put a magnet there. You could put the planet there. This just seems to be how nature does things. So anyway, I thought that was. As the magnetic field goes up externally, this molecule raises its frequency to match that. So all in all, it's a really interesting molecule. I think there's a lot more to be found there. It's very interesting. So thank you, and if anybody has any thoughts on this, I'd love to hear some thoughts. So take care.